thinking. Okay. Great. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm so excited. My name is Beth Borody, and I am the founder and CEO of Femina Collective. Welcome to the Changing Faces of Mining. And if you are new here, or if you've been here before, you know that Peggy Bell was usually the one who hosts and facilitates these conversations, and she has handed the reins over to me today to have a really unique and special conversation with Jess Parr, who's with me. So Jess and I met a few months ago. We met through a mutual contact of ours who all the introduction to me said of who I should meet was just, you need to meet this woman. You and her are going to have a lot to talk about. You have the same ethos. You have the same sort of experience. And sure enough, when Jess and I met, it very much was that feeling. It was that connection on female empowerment, looking at how women take up space, how women own their presence, how they own who they are and what they do in the world. And the coolest thing is that we are from very different industries and very different worlds. And so Jess is a high performance strategy and career coach and business coach. She helps women really get to extreme levels of success and whatever that means for them, working day in and day out. And one of the things that Jess has launched this year that was the reason that we met was this event called the Nice Girl Funeral. And so before we get into today's topic about women and wealth and why women need to be investing, Jess, I would love for you to tell us about Nice Girl Funeral, where the idea came from, what it is, when it is, and what women can expect from it.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. And I'm so excited to chat today with you. And you know, this is not my usual audience, as you mentioned as well. We're from very different industries, but the parallels and through lines are just so, so one and the same for so many women in different areas, whether you are somebody who is working in the mining industry or my space, which is like the online coaching and online business industry, completely different. And Nice Girl Funeral Live is a experience that's in person. Something I actually ran as a virtual experience this spring for my community, and it just took off as far as women really resonating with a lot of the conversation that I was bringing forward around how we have inherent covert people-pleasing patterns and habits and just even limiting beliefs as women, who are very even successful career women that are still limiting our ability to be fully embodied and as successful, have, as much wealth and impact as we desire. So I realized it needed to be an in-person experience, and we are doing this in Toronto this October, and it is coming up very soon. So I'm very excited. We have an incredible lineup of 6, 7, 8-figure women really taking the stage to have edgy, taboo conversations, like pulling back the veil on what it really looks like to run a very highly successful business, and also laying to rest a lot of the conditioning that we have kind of taken on as our identity as women so that we can thrive in so many different ways. So yes, it's a whole interesting edge pushing initiative.
And it's one of the reasons because you have invited me to come and speak at this conference, which I am so honored to be able to do, because when we were chatting, it was all about what we at Femina were doing in the mining industry and how we were looking to radically change the experience of women, and how we really want to make sure that women in our own industry, again, can show up in the way that they want to. And so it was just such an incredible fit with this whole idea of like, letting the nice girl go and not needing to conform to what those expectations are on that societal side. So I'm really excited for the event. I'm hoping that we have some women from our own community and from the mining industry who are in Toronto come and check it out. Because if you see any of the marketing around it, it is definitely something like you have never seen before, which is really, that's what we want. We're all tired of the conference circuit. And so having that fresh take is really exciting. But let's dive into today's topic. So as we were chatting and as we've been getting to know each other and kind of following each other's content between our different platforms, you have seen that I obviously come from the mining industry. And one of the things that we are doing here at Femina that we are very passionate about is providing education for women, not only just around the mining industry, but around investing as well, and the investment opportunities that the mining industry provides. And the reason that we do this is because it's so unknown, even for those of us who are in the industry. We are women that typically are making some fairly good salaries, and we don't realize the opportunities that are in front of us with mining, or how to start getting involved in mining. And so I would love to hear from you first. Before seeing anything with Femina, kind of what was your take on the mining industry at large, or what did you know about it?
I think, if you go prior to our introduction, I wouldn't have even known anything about it at all. Other than we're from Canada, natural resources is a huge part of our entire existence and the GDP. And I don't know anything about actually being able to, what it looks like from an investment standpoint, anything like that. And I'm assuming too, that's for a lot of people, even in my community, because it's not something, it's so niche and yet it's so large. However, yeah, absolutely baseline level knowledge around.
Yeah, we live in Canada. We've got some things in the ground. It comes out sometimes, and that's kind of it. Yeah. It's totally, even before coming into the industry, it's what I knew about the mining industry. It was pretty much nothing. I had some experiences growing up in West Africa where I saw some mines, but otherwise, I didn't really know a whole lot. And I think one of the things why it's so unknown to individuals, and women in particular, is that even in the mining industry, only 17% of the workforce in Canada is women. Yeah. And so we are still very male dominated. We still have a lot of work to do to catch up from an employee standpoint. And we have even more work when it comes to the investment side, because mining is everywhere. One of our members, actually, she's in the UK. And one of the things that she coined that I say all the time now is that if it's not grown, it's mined. So anything that you use, we're using our computers right now, we're using different technology. I'm on my desk, I'm sitting in my chair, all of these sorts of things all require mining and all the materials that come out of the ground. And we know that as we are kind of moving away from oil and gas, we're moving to different energy sources, we're looking to solar, to wind, other types of transitions. We need the materials that are under the ground in order to make that transition happen. And so that means this industry is going to be moving really fast and growing really rapidly over the next little bit. And that means there's going to be opportunity. And let me just caveat this for you and for anyone watching or who watches this later. I am not a financial advisor. You should always talk to an actual professional about your money. I am just sharing kind of our life experience and what's happening. But I also think that you are a smart woman and you are capable of making your own choices, and you should have the information available to you to understand what's in front of you when it comes to an investment perspective. So before I go further, combine those two things for me. So mining, now you're kind of brand new. You're kind of watching me, who is one of, a big pool of people who talks about mining. But also the investment side, because you're someone who has your own investments outside of your work and things like that. But talk to me about kind of your feelings or perceptions around combining those two things together.
Well, listen, I'm super interested, and this, I've voiced it to you about just educating myself and learning, and so many different ways and areas of the market where we're just never even exposed to. So for me, this is great. I probably, honestly, my entire lived experience had such little knowledge about making my money work harder for me for the longest time. And it wasn't until I would even say my 30s that I started actually, seeking out resources and looking into what that would actually mean. I think it's so important for, so many women. It's crazy to me too, because you're Femina as a whole and as a community, the women in this industry probably also having more of a lack of knowledge around it too, and being able to leverage it in order to build more wealth is super huge. One of the through lines that we connected on was this idea of that we need more wealth in the hands of women. And so for me, on a personal note, I'm just like, yeah, I have ADHD, so I just fixate on things and I do things in sprints. And my last one of those was the real estate market and what that looks like and how I can invest in different, properties or create, a basement apartment and rent it out, which, all of these things that I've now discovered and done. But this idea of learning about what this could look like, watching your content and how you share the different kind of, honestly, like some of the returns and being so candid, that's like my kind of language. I love transparency. That's a huge part of my conversation and brand and my community. And I think based on my assumptions about this particular industry, there's probably a lot of pieces and parts that are very buttoned up and maybe, gate kept in certain ways. So I'm just so glad to have connected with you because I am ready to learn more about what that looks like, and being able to suss it out and use my discernment as to whether or not that would be something for me to, play with and to also look at seriously as, an investment.
Mm-hmm. I think there's so many things that you said there that even being someone who was working in the industry, I had the same assumptions as you. And I think one of the assumptions that I had was that if you're going to invest in mining, you have to kind of already have made it. You have to have millions of dollars to be able to put in. You have to have these huge pots of capital in order to have any sort of impact. And it was one of the first things that assumption was totally blown out of the water for me when I realized that in Canada and the US is quite similar. If you are an accredited investor, so there are things that the government outlines for being accredited, which is either based on your income levels or level of net worth or assets that you have. If you are an accredited investor, you have the opportunity to participate in private placements with companies. And these are opportunities to get in with companies at a specialized share price that is not found on the general market. And it was the first time that I realized, holy cow, there is a whole world of people making money kind of in these deals that is like totally legitimate and totally out there. And I bet you there's not many women playing in that space. Yeah. And so when I learned about this, and I learned that I myself qualified as accredited investor, and I had no idea what that term even was, I thought there are many more women out there, both in the industry and out, who also need to have this realization. And what that did is it really sent me on this 2-year rabbit hole of trying to find, what do women know about investing? How do women interact with the mining industry? How do we bring these things together? Because the other thing with the industry is, as I said, because the industry is growing so fast right now, and so many of these materials are going to need to be coming out of the ground, it needs a whole lot of capital being poured into it, far more than we've seen right now. And mining is risky, and mining does have a bad reputation because it hasn't been the cleanest industry in the past. It has a legacy that isn't a great one. But we're kind of dealing with all of these complexities and seeing improvements happen while also knowing we got to put more capital in here. And now we have this whole demographic of potential new investors that have never been tapped or possibly don't even know about the industry and the opportunities that are in there. And so it got me down this rabbit hole on accredited investing. It got me down this rabbit hole of how do people invest? And then I quickly realized, wait, we are like 10 steps ahead of ourselves, and we need to back up because women just aren't taught about investing and finances, period. And very similar to you, growing up, I wasn't really taught about finances. My brother is a financial planner. He kind of always had more of that like know-how and education, but I was kind of always under the assumption, kind of conscious or unconscious, that I would just marry someone. They would handle the budget for the family. I could work, but it's kind of like left in the man's hands, which is crazy for me to think about now. And I realized, wow, we need to take steps back even more so to even just look at how women even interact with their wealth and with their finances. Mm-hmm. And the more I talk to women, the more I realize that if you weren't kind of born into wealth or you weren't born into money, every woman kind of has this pivot moment where it's like, I didn't really have a lot. Then all of a sudden I did. And all of a sudden I had all of this extra cash. I had all of this extra ability to make moves, and didn't really know what to do with it or how they wanted it to work for them. And I was very much the same. And so we started looking at how do we take it back to the bare basics and look at how do we cover the foundations of financial literacy? How do you determine your net worth? How do you look at your risk tolerance? If you're looking at mining, what does that even mean? How do you understand what the industry is, what different materials you like? And that's when we decided to build our course, our Women in Investing course, and really dive into the nitty gritty, right from all of that foundation setting all the way through to looking at the mining industry, due diligence tools, all of those types of things, to try and mirror this desperate need for capital with all of this new money that could possibly be there. And I think one of my most favorite stats that I say all the time, because when I learned it, I think my brain broke a little bit. But in Canada, women are going to have control of 50% of wealth within the next 5 to 10 years. Like, that is enormous. That has never happened before. We've never seen women control wealth like this before. And I think women then need to know more and more and more about all of the different ways they can interact and all the different ways that they can invest. Because, as you said, we want the right money in the right hands of the right people. And women just care about different things when it comes to where their money goes and how their money works for them and what they want it to do. And so it's like just this sheer mission of mine and of Femina's to get in there and say, wait, we need to talk about this. We need to be like so honest and so transparent about how we are investing as individuals or what we're seeing in the market, because you're right, this cloud of secrecy almost lives in the industry. And I can't help but think, one, it's a power play, and it's to make sure that certain voices don't come to the table, with understanding that mining is a risky business. Mining comes with a lot of risk. People lose money in mining, and people make exorbitant amounts of money in mining. And so it really is just making sure, again, that women have those tools. And women are able to kind of make those decisions. And I love with someone like you who comes from outside of the industry, that it's like, you're exactly who we want to be knowing about this and understanding kind of what's happening in this space, or kind of what's happening or learning about the industry kind of in this way, because it is so fundamental for us to be able to be having these conversations.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%. That's, a lot of my brand mission as well is financial freedom for women. And I think the big kind of gap in my experience is that we are often kind of strategically kept ignorant of how to manage wealth or grow our money or leverage in certain ways. And then because of that, we end up making decisions that don't actually help us, sometimes hurt us. We all go through this process, but especially as women, then we create stories around the fact that we can't manage money, that we need to be more risk averse, that we aren't able to trust ourselves because we've already been kind of discluded from information that would help us make those informed decisions. And therefore we're in a cycle of not being able to continue to grow. And so I think what you're doing, from any standpoint, obviously there's so many different ways that women can do this in all industries. However, I think the one thing that is going to be collective is that there's always going to be risk with investing. There's always going to be an element of, you need to have information to make an informed decision. And there has to be some sort of way to measure, how averse or how, tolerant you can be. However, I think that it should be up to us in the first place. So giving women the information that they need in the first place is everything. And I love what you're doing with it, right?
And our minds can change as well, right? Especially when it comes to that risk tolerance. I remember when I first started investing, and particularly when I first started investing in mining stocks, because outside of being accredited, there's the open market that anyone can buy on, and anyone can be involved with purchasing stocks or EFTs or whatever it may be, in companies, bonds, all of that sort of thing. And I remember the first time that I put money in, I was so nervous. And again, I was in the industry, but I was so nervous, and my risk tolerance was fairly low. And I actually lost all of my first investment. And I lost it because I acted really quickly, as opposed to really understanding why I was doing it and what I was doing that investment for. And understanding that mining tends to be a longer term game. And so as I've learned about it, and as I continue in my own just wealth wealth growth and generation, what my strategies are, my risk tolerance has changed drastically. And it changes between different investment accounts that I have. My longer term ones, actually, my husband and I had this conversation over the summer, is that where a big bucket of our kind of cash is in our more longer term planning and investments. And I kind of said to him, I said, we are at the age where we can take the most risk right now because we are in the prime of our money making, and we're going to be making money for many more years to come, to keep building on our own wealth. We're not close enough to retirement that we need to be, really careful about what our risks are. And we're not so new in our careers that we are like not making healthy salaries. And so we went all in with risks on that side, and saying to our advisor, we said, we really want that to be where we take the big swings and we do the big moves and we kind of see what happens. And then through other accounts, it very much varies, because some of them we want for short-term game. And so we just want to know that we're going to get a healthy return on whatever we're investing in. And quite honestly, for us, that has been our mining stocks and our EFTs, things like that. Our vacation funds, our just go out and have fun funds, our things like that actually come from the mining side right now, because we are seeing such huge returns on that. That is not always the case. That is market conditions. That's a lot of geopolitics that plays into it. But again, when you know the information and when you can have that education in front of you, you can then make informed decisions. And one of the things, you said, women are taught that we are risk adverse and we don't like risk. I always challenge that with anyone who brings that forward to me, because I do not believe that as women that we are risk adverse. I believe that we are risk aware. And I believe that we possibly take some more time to assess our risk and to assess what's in front of us. We may ask a few more questions. We may be a little bit less spontaneous when it comes to money, but we are not risk adverse. We are just risk aware on where and how we want to put our money forward. And I think that probably comes from the fact that we are only one generation into being able to have full control over our money. Like, I think about, like, I have a daughter. She is just under the age of 2. She'll be 2 in a few months. And I think about the hopeful world that's being created for her when it comes to women in finance, and how much better off she's going to be set for full control, understanding, and capabilities with her money. Where people like you and I, we kind of grew up in this sandwich generation of kind of being the first ones to be able to control our wealth, but also kind of getting out of that systemic kind of system that was built for us. And now we're at these spots where we're like, holy crap, we want more and more and more. Like, we're unbridled now, and we're going, and we are like wanting as much as we can on the wealth side. And as we want to, again, have all of those choices. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit just about kind of your own like money journey, and where, like, how you have seen your own kind of mentality and things shift with wealth, being able to build your own wealth and have that control.
I mean, I don't even know where to start with that, to be honest, but I think it probably mirrors some people's stories where I just was completely ignorant to how things worked, and I never was taught any kind of money management strategies. I didn't understand how credit worked when I was, opening my credit accounts or co-borrowing for lines of credit when I went to school. Like, there was just so much, like, a lack of education around it, and also just a narrative, or just at least a subconscious narrative that I took on, that, like, one, money is everything and you have to do anything and everything to be successful and make it. And then 2, it's like the scariest topic to talk about, or to, it's very complicated. And therefore I had lots of debt, like, coming out of school. When I graduated university, I think I was probably at least like $60,000 or $70,000 in debt, and felt so much shame around it. Had no idea. I couldn't tell you what, the difference between the interest on anything like that versus a principal payment was, or, and they would hand that out too, I guess, 10, 15 years ago. It was like, here's your free loan from the government as well. We had OSAP and all of these things. I was never under any kind of understanding. And so my 20s was very much figuring that out and reburying myself and having no idea about investing, and also the assumption, which you mentioned earlier, of like, I need to be in a completely different state of wealth in order to invest in anything. It doesn't make sense, right? Like if I didn't know the difference between good debt and bad debt, or anything to do with leverage, or how mortgages work. Like my experience was very masked in shame, and my experience was much, debt was a huge part of my life for a very long time. And therefore, I think that also affected my money management and how I either like avoided or overspent, and a lot of people we don't have these conversations, and it's not a huge piece of my work, but I definitely see the patterns working with women who know how to make money like nothing. They can print it. They can make a crap ton of it. And I'm sure a lot of people here also, especially at this point in life too, or a lot of women in your community, they're making great money. It's a completely different ballgame to actually keep it and grow it. So that's been the biggest shift for me, especially just like years of kind of unraveling all of these money stories and playing with the dynamics of relationships and money and what that looks like, and coming into becoming a mom and what that looks like in investing. So my journey with it has been very tumultuous. However, I think that there's just so much power in knowing and researching and having more information available to learn about it. So my foray into investing was actually through real estate. And that wasn't that long ago. It was only probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I started looking into what that could actually do for, what I wanted to build in my life. And I, like you said, we have kids almost the same age, I guess, because mine just turned 2. And it's incredible to kind of like consider where his baseline is going to be in comparison to where I felt mine was. And there's so much that we can do to, set ourselves up, but also like our entire families up for generational wealth, and not have to work ourselves into the ground in order to earn more all of the time. Now, of course, I'm a hard worker, always have been, always will be. I'm very driven. So are you. We're the same. But that being said, that was also an experience in my life too, for many years, where I sacrificed everything, my health and my relationships and my life in general, in order to make money, because I thought it was the answer, and it sure was not at that point in time. So yes, it's been a wild ride.
I get that. I feel like we grew up in the Carrie Bradshaw era, where it was just like, I saw this recently somewhere on social media, where it was the idea of like, do I buy these shoes or do I pay my rent this month?
Yes.
And it was very glamorized that you buy the shoes and you just figure out rent later, or those sorts of things. And also someone who came out of university with loads of OSAP debt. I didn't even graduate university, so I got all of the debt and didn't even get a piece of paper to show for it. It was that same kind of crushing feeling of, now what do I do? And how does this get moving forward? And I think that is the beauty, is that's why we need to have really transparent conversations, because it is not just you and I who have that similar money story. We live different lives, but we had the same kind of, again, those throughput lines are very similar. And I can tell you, by running our course a couple times now, there are many women from all socioeconomic kind of backgrounds that have the same sort of story, that have carried debt, that have carried it for their family. And the way that you just finished that is it was so beautiful, because it's exactly what we say about women. It was like setting up the next generation for that generational wealth. It's taking care of our families. It's taking care of others outside of our just immediate needs. And I think that for me has been so crucial when I've looked at my own family's investing, what we do, how we do it. We were the same way. My first investment was real estate, because that's what we're taught. We're taught either go buy a house or go buy a second house or buy a rental property or buy this, buy that. And there's currently debate around if that's like the right thing to do now. But it was just because that just seemed to be the most stable thing. It's what our parents grew up with. It's what that understanding of like having a house is kind of the end all and be all. It's always going to build equity. It's always going to do these things. And now we're seeing for people who bought in the COVID bubble for real estate, that may not actually be the case right now. There is actually a lot of bubble bursting that has happened. And so we know that these things ebb and flow. And so that diversification is so important when it comes to portfolios and investment portfolios. But what else are we taught about other than real estate, other than having a TFSA or an RRSP or whatever it may be? What are we taught about? And that's what really floored me when I was really starting to look into, well, then how do I want to invest and influence the mining industry? How do we get more women to understand this is an industry for them to play in and for them to sit at the investor table? What does that do to the industry as a whole? How does that influence how projects are designed, how management teams are made? How does that look at board composition? When you're a shareholder, you now have a say in how these companies act and perform. And the mining industry is not always known for the best behavior. And so if you have a different voice of investor and shareholder coming into these companies, how can we then bring our message to how we want to hold companies accountable for what they, for how they're performing and acting? And that's not just what is the stock price. That's how healthy are your teams? How healthy is your project? The communities around your sites, like how are you kind of holistically leading this company? And it's just been wild to see light bulbs go off in women's heads when they understand that, wait, this is something that I can be doing. And again, you can do it. You could take $10 and invest it in the stock market and make $20, you know, and that sort of thing. And so it's not this such a complex or unknown industry that people kind of can't get in and can't get their first investment in. It really is understanding what your values of it as an investor are, you know. And within mining, like a great example of that is that there are people who don't invest in gold, and they don't invest in gold because it's really hard methods to mine gold, and it's like very kind of environmentally destructive to mine gold. But yet there are people who only invest in gold because if you watch the market, gold prices have gone up by 90% in the last 5 years. That's thanks to COVID. That's thanks to the numerous wars that are going on around the world. Like when there is uncertainty, gold soars. And so people invest for different reasons, but the fact is, like, if you are looking kind of at your life and how you're living your life and what the values that you have or the opportunities that you want to kind of see come to fruition for this green transition or society that we want, it's like, take it all back to what are the materials being used for this, and how do I get involved with this, and how do I understand what my options are when it comes to this piece. And I'll be totally frank, some of the things that I still do is go to ChatGPT, and I will have ChatGPT go through like the top performing stocks for like X size company, X commodity. This is kind of the leadership team that I want them to look at. These are the locations I want mines to be in because my personal investment is, I'm very specific about kind of where in the world I want to support mining. And so it's like, we have the technology that you don't have to sit there and try and do that all of yourself. AI is a beautiful tool to get you started on that and started on those learnings. And I think that, again, the more and more we neutralize this and we normalize it for women, and we say, like, we don't put mining on this pedestal of being something that's untouchable or not understandable for women, the more women we're going to see starting to play in this space and starting to put money here. And then I hope that grows. You know, I met a woman earlier this year who is big in the agriculture world, and she's a farmer, and she started like teaching me about agriculture. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much about this world that I just like don't know about at all. And that's where she's investing, and that's like what she has. And so we kind of did this knowledge exchange of our two industries, and women need to see that more and more, because again, it's not about saying, Jess, go invest in XYZ stock, but it's about, hey, Jess, here's what you need to know, and here are tools that can help you make decisions when it comes to how you kind of put your money forward and how you want to use your money.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, that is this is why I love the cross-pollination, even though it's like very random from the outside. I think, you know, one of the things that is so important to me too, is like the way that I lead my clients and they lead theirs is very much about giving them the information and the experience and some strategies that have worked and making them feel empowered basically in their own agency to make those decisions, which I know is a huge part of what you're doing with this. So I'm super excited to dive in, and it sounds incredible. Just love learning about things like this and being able to take that information and then, contextually kind of cross analyze with, the other people in my life or the other things that I'm looking to do. And so I'm really excited as well, just to have you speak and bring this into my spaces as much as, we're here talking about this today. It's awesome and it's amazing. And this is how I think, there are so many incredible women leading initiatives with such very specific visions like yours. And even mine, I feel, is very specific, and yet it applies to women as a whole. So it's incredible. And I love it.
And let me tell you, mining makes for great dinner conversation. You'll get people going, and it's like a great little like party trick to bring in mining into the conversation. Because again, there is varying levels of understanding of what it is. Yeah. And when you start talking about investing in mining, because it's still so kind of uncommon for people to do, you look really unique, and people are really interested in that and are like, wait, what? You do what? Yeah. And I think one of the first times that I really shared, I shared on Instagram a couple of weeks ago, I just opened up my whole portfolio and said, here's what I invest in, and here's what the stock prices of these companies have done over the last, I think it was last year I put, and out of the 7 or 8 of them that are there is one that hasn't performed, which I know I don't expect it to perform. It is a very long-term investment. And so I know it's going to be in the red, but everything else was green. And I got so many comments from women sending me DMs, messaging me, thanking me for being so public about it and thanking me for putting that information out. And then I really ruffled some feathers as people were like, you're going to give people the wrong information. This isn't like, you shouldn't be advising for this. Mining's too risky. Mining's this, mining's that. And again, I think that we are smart individuals, that you're going to make decisions based on what your values and what is best for you. But if we don't have the information, it just remains inaccessible and it remains too complicated to try and bring out. And one of my favorite stories, I shared it with you last week, and I share it in our course when we go through it as part of our opening. One of the reasons why we built Women in Investing, based on everything that I just shared, but I did this very unscientific experiment where I asked 3 of my heterosexual couple friends to talk to their financial advisor, give them a call and say, I want to look at mining and bringing in some sort of mining aspect to our portfolio. Without a shadow of a doubt, all 3 women came back to me and said their advisors, who are all different people, and these people like don't know each other, their advisors said, that's too risky. We're asked, does your husband know that you're asking about this? Let's look at other options that will be safer and will provide a more stable return. All 3 men were told, okay, this is a risky industry, but come in, we'll show you what we do at our firm. We'll show you what the options are, and we'll see what makes sense for you. That in itself, when I got that feedback and I got that information back, I wanted to scream, because I was like, this is exactly why we need women to be able to control their own money and control their own wealth. And that doesn't mean owning it all. Again, I work with a financial advisor. I highly recommend people work with financial advisors, but your financial advisor works for you. You do not work for them. You can ask questions. You can ask for them to put things into your portfolios based on your needs, based on what you want to do. And you need to be able to have that information, because again, it really is, it comes back to, we just need women to know. We are an industry that needs capital. I'm going to continue being very transparent about what my portfolio is doing. I had this like idea walking through the grocery store yesterday where I was like, every Friday, I'm just going to do a summary on my portfolio, and people can see what have I done? Have I bought something? Have I sold something? Am I holding? What have the returns been this week? Because again, it is that level of transparency that then makes it accessible for other people to believe, like, oh, I can go and do that. I can pick a few stocks here and there. I can start my own learning journey, and makes the industry far less scary for those who are kind of outside of it at this point.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I know that that's something I also commented with you. I saw you post something along those lines. And then there was a couple other posts almost behind that I was like, this is exactly what needs to happen, in different, you're always going to inherently upset the wrong people who, for whatever reason, are not.
I mean, I'm probably going to upset them anyways. So it was just
really
like anything that I'm posting right now. So it's fine. Go ahead and
they're not paying for a class in your classroom where you're telling them and dictating, what to do. You're posting a post on Instagram. We all are adults here and they have autonomy to make decisions. Yeah. But I think one of the most powerful things about that level of transparency is giving people, one of the biggest things I've said since the beginning, especially just being in the online space, is like every single time that another woman has shared like the money that she's making or what it actually looks like to do what she's doing in her business, the behind the scenes that people are too scared to talk about, especially these conversations when we're talking about figures and wealth in general, people get triggered, but it's the most activating thing for me. It's the reason I'm here. If people would not have been willing to talk about this as openly as they have, then I would never have even known it was a possibility that I could pursue, which is exactly what you're doing, with Femina and with this course too. It's incredible.
And I think it's every time we run the course, we get the feedback from people who began both in the industry and from outside of the industry, who both come into the course being like, I have like a pretty good understanding kind of what I have, but I don't really know how to use it or what to do, to post course, giving us this feedback of like, I have so much more clarity. I just get it. I understand what my options are here. We've had women go and make their first investments or participate in private placements because they have that confidence through the course. And like our course, we partner with a financial institution. We partner with Nicola Wealth, who provides that information around the financial literacy, because it's amazing, again, with just going back to the basics of people not even understanding, how do I calculate my net worth?
Yeah.
Exactly as you said, what is leverage and how do I do that? What can I hold in my different accounts? How can I actually make my money work for me? And so being able to just be a stepping stone in women's own learning on the investment side is just a really wonderful thing for us, and why we're so dedicated to doing it again and again. And our next course starts the week after Thanksgiving. People are registering right now. We're really looking forward to welcoming another cohort into this because it's our mission. It makes sense for women to be where everyone else is, and for us to have the same tools, education, knowledge that everyone else has as well. And mining is not scary. Mining is risky. Mining is not scary. Mining is not inaccessible. And investing in mining can happen at whatever your tolerance is and whatever kind of your scale or scope of finances is. There is an opportunity for mining to really help diversify what you already have, and be a strong performer in your portfolio, from my perspective and from my example of how it's been helping us.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I can't wait to nerd out on all things, because it's definitely something that's interesting. The more I learn about it again, and the more that I get to watch you share in your experience, the more it's like, okay, this is very, and I'm sure that's like the feeling for so many people in your space. I think we tend to avoid things we don't necessarily feel comfortable even having conversations about.
Yeah.
And it's giving women the knowledge that they need to feel comfortable enough to actually hold their own, because it's exactly back to the example that you gave, where I'm not going to explain to you why, but this is what you're going to do instead. Or I'm not going to explain to you why, but I'm dismissing your question, right? And it's just part of what we go through at this point in time. So now you kind of have the knowledge to actually stand up for yourself, for the interests in the long game that you have. So it's incredible. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on here and chatting with me about this. And I'm very much looking forward to Nice Girl Funeral in just a couple weeks. Again, I think we're going to have just an incredible experience with you. I look forward to sharing more of this with women from the stage. And I know that you and I are going to continue kind of having these conversations and building off of each other in the future. But I really appreciate your time today coming in and doing this and having this conversation, and look forward to many, many more. So thanks, Jess.
Of course. No, you're welcome. This was awesome.